I've been using the GH5 for about 8 months, and it's truly a great camera. Not perfect, but great. Now, I know a lot of people are saying the Sony a7 III is their camera of the year, and I get it, but for me, it's the GH5. I mean, what's great about Panasonic is they just pack their camera full of features. In fact, if I went through all their features, this would be a much longer video because this camera is packing some heat. So I'm just gonna focus on the stuff that matters to me. Being able to shoot 4K at 60 frames per second is amazing for getting some high-res, slow-motion shots. And this is something that the a7 III can't do. And this has kind of been my secret weapon. Many of you have commented about how good my videos look, and literally almost all of my B-roll for my YouTube videos are shot in 4K at 60 frames per second. I run my YouTube videos at 24 frames per second, and with this, I can run the 60 frames per second B-roll at 40% speed. I mean, with that crispy slow motion, I don't really feel like I need a gimbal. And Panasonic's excellent dual image stabilization, reducing the shakiness, helps with this as well. And my B-roll is still a 4K image, so I can zoom in and reframe the shot, and no one ever knows. It's kind of amazing. The layout of the camera is impressive with several custom buttons, and the menus are easy to navigate. It's just clean and clearly designed with filmmakers in mind. And I really like that on the mode switching dial, I have 3 custom options that I can set to whatever I want. I have one set up for 4K at 24 frames per second and another set for 4K at 60 frames per second, so I can easily switch as the situation arises. Also, I always shoot my footage in the vlog profile, which is a really flat colored profile, and you do have to buy it separately. And if you don't want to do that, I know a lot of people like the natural profile as well. But pro tip, Neumann Films sells some very nice, professionally done Luts, specifically made for the GH5, for about 40 bucks. And honestly, that seems a little pricey for just files that make your footage look pretty. But I have used these on every video basically since I bought them, and they have been really well worth it. I especially like a one called Garberville. I also just picked up Joo.Works Color Correction Kit for the GH5, and it includes several Luts as well. And I'm using them for this video right now. I'll drop a link to both of these below so you can check them out. The GH5 has so many bells and whistles, like for instance zebras, so you know that different parts of your image aren't overexposed. It has guidelines so you can properly compose your image. It even has focus peaking. There's even a way to shoot your videos in a more flat color space with their Vlog upgrade. It's a separate purchase you can make from Panasonic. And the camera has a built-in way to where you can see what that flat look would look like after a LUT is applied. So I have a favorite LUT called Garberville, and I can take that LUT and load it into the camera, and that way I can see what my footage is going to look like after I apply the Garberville LUT, but it's still filming it onto the SD card in Vlog, which is flat. Now the GH5's LCD is plenty bright. In fact, I can see it from right here. I can see myself on the screen, even though it's really bright outside. But it has an electric viewfinder, which is really nice because you can kind of see what your image or your video is going to look like in a larger space. And you can also see it in kind of a dark environment. You just put your eye through the viewfinder and you get a really good idea of what your video is gonna end up turning out to be. And let's not forget that flip out LCD screen. It's kind of a must if you're a vlogger or you film yourself a lot. It's just a way for you to monitor what you look like and kind of compose your scene even though you're in it. Panasonic even sells an audio attachment that plugs into the hot shoe of the GH5 that gives you access to 2 XLR ports, which you can use to plug in microphones. In fact, you're hearing it right now. It actually sounds really good. This is a microphone that I'm borrowing from my friend Alan from his YouTube channel Sound Speeds, and I think it sounds really good. It's a nice clean signal, and it just records straight to the SD card with the video. It really saves you the trouble from having to sync it later. It sounds pretty clean, and it can even provide phantom power if your microphone needs it. And the Panasonic app that you can use to control the GH5 remotely, despite the fact that it has meh reviews, I actually really like it. I'm using it right now to stop and start the recording as I'm recording what you're watching right now. There's so much more that I could talk about with the GH5, like the fact that it can shoot in a 4:2:2 color space, and that it can even shoot at super high bit rates that I haven't even tried yet, and those are really cool features. But let's talk about the stuff that isn't so great. If you're familiar with my channel, you might know that I bought the GH5 when it launched, and I returned it because the autofocus was, let's say, weak. I then went to Canon instead because they have great autofocus, but as I used that camera for a while, I found that it was a little stuck in the past, and I eventually went back to the GH5. Panasonic has since made strides to improve its autofocus, and it has a lot of autofocus modes you can try, but let's just say it's still not up to the competition. And here is what the Canon T7i, which has Canon's legendary dual pixel autofocus built in, looks like compared to the GH5's autofocus, and I have it set to face detect mode because that's the mode I've had the best luck with. You can see in this test that it keeps up pretty well, but I still prefer Canon's autofocus system. I just find it to be much more reliable. I'd say it might be good enough for vlogging if you use the 12-35 lens. It seems to do a better job with that one. But if you're good with filming your vlogs in 1080p, then I just get a Canon. For shots like what you're seeing right now, I still manually set the autofocus because I just don't know if I can trust the GH5 to keep me in focus. When I'm doing B-roll for my product reviews, I'll do this thing where I'll half press in the shutter button, which will get it to grab focus, and I'll hold it down and it'll just kind of keep the focus there, and then I can kind of move the camera and just make sure I don't get it too far or too close to the product to keep it in focus. And I've kind of gotten used to that since I've been using the GH5 for so long, and it's something to consider if the autofocus just isn't doing what you'd like. And the second and last elephant in the room when it comes to the GH5 is the size of its sensor. It's somewhere around a fourth of the size of a full frame sensor like you would find on the Sony a7 III. Having this smaller sensor can hurt you in two ways, one in low light, and two in depth of field. But I don't really think that the smaller sensor size is a deal breaker when it comes to the GH5, because if you ever need more light or you want a much more nicer bokeh, nice depth of field shot, you can always use a lens that has a nice and wide aperture, and it can get that nice creamy bokeh, and it can pull in a lot of that light. For me, I typically won't push the ISO above 800, but I can push it up to 1600 if I really need it, and it's still a usable shot in my experience. But if getting really nice low light shots is a big concern for you, like maybe you shoot at night a lot, then maybe you should grab the GH5s instead. You'll lose that in-body stabilization, so your footage will be maybe a little bit more shaky when you're using it handheld, but the sensor is made with low light situations in mind, and it does a much better at capturing low light. But despite all that, the GH5 is my favorite camera of 2018. Panasonic just packed it tight with so many great features, many of which I didn't even get a chance to cover. But even though I love it, that doesn't mean I'm sticking with it in 2019. So the camera that I have my eye on in 2019 is the Sony a7S III, under a few conditions though. See, Sony has great autofocus, even though I kind of prefer Canon's implementation of autofocus, but I've heard that Sony's is great, and the rumor is it's going to have a flip out screen, kind of like the GH5, and that is something that I absolutely value. But the biggest condition for me that Sony has to put into the a7S III, what I want to see is 4K at 60 frames per second. For me, there's no going back. This is an absolute must. If Sony can pull that off and even get better low light than their current a7 III and keep that full frame creamy bokeh goodness, I don't think I can resist that. So Sony, please deliver, because I have every intention of switching if you can check those boxes. But I wanna know what you think. Are you looking to upgrade your camera next year? And if so, what to? Also, what is your favorite camera of 2018? And I have a feeling that a lot of you are gonna say the a7 III, but let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and please let me know what you thought of this video with a like or a dislike. And if you really enjoyed it, please subscribe and ring that bell notification, because I have more videos coming up real soon, just like this one. Thanks again, and I guess I will see you next time when the search for awesome continues.